Bonjour everyone, I am Anne-Lise Cailliez and welcome to Parlez-Vous CEO, where we teach the corporate talk and get real about entrepreneurship. Each week, I chat with founders and CEOs who build businesses their way, through the failures, pivots, and breakthroughs. And they bring the fire. Plus, I'll drop some golden nuggets of wisdom from my own entrepreneurial journey. This is your space to grow, learn, and evolve with a true growth mindset. Remember, success isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. Now let's kick things off and get this party started. Welcome to another episode of Parlez-Vous. My name is Anne-Lise Cailliez and I am your host, and I'm super excited to have with me today Erin. So meet Erin Stern, the Johns Hopkins and Florida tech-trained behavior analyst who founded Steps Behavioral Health in 2008 and grew it from a solo practice to 3 clinics across Maryland, pioneering innovative ABA programs like Early Steps and Social Steps, while building a reputation for child-centered, clinically run autism care that keeps families at the heart of every decision. Erin, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today. And for the people who are just meeting you today, could you share a little bit about your story and your background?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Anne-Lise. So I started Steps in 2008. I was a special educator in Howard County Public Schools. I taught life skills. I taught inclusion. Then I went on and taught at an all special ed school. I loved teaching, but I felt really strongly that I wanted to be able to work closer with families and be able to help them navigate some of the challenges that I was seeing them have, which was accessing some of the life skills that their children were missing and some of the other things that they were having issues and challenges within the home environment that I wasn't able to assist with at school. So in 2015, I left the school system and put all of my energy towards Steps. And I started to get credentialed with insurance companies because as a behavior analyst, you can bill through insurance companies. That was a law that passed in 2014 that in Maryland, you could bill insurance companies for ABA therapy, applied behavior analysis. So we were at a really great opportunity to start helping families because prior to that, families were, taking out second mortgages and really, putting so much financial strain on families to be able to support their children. And now it was an opportunity for families to be able to utilize medical insurance. So we started, working through that process. And then in 2018, 2018, I met my business partner, and he has a pediatric therapy clinic that does speech OT and PT, which is called the Therapy Spot. And we partnered, and we now have Steps. And Steps, like you said, has 3 clinics across Maryland. And we see families all over the state because we do in-home and in-clinic therapy. And we are now currently doing therapy in Georgia, and we're getting ready. We're poised to open and do in-home therapy in Colorado and hopefully Pennsylvania down the road. So we're really excited for that growth.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And Erin, can you share with us a little bit how it was in the early years of starting the business in 2008?
It was tough. I was a teacher. I didn't know much about behavior, about business really. And I remember a conversation with my husband who said, this needs to be a business. It's not a volunteer operation, because I was like, oh, well, they can't pay. No worries. I'll help them out. And he was like, we can't do that. Like we need to, be able to support our family and ourselves. And, it definitely took time to get traction and figure out how to make this work. I want to be able to help everyone. And that's, the challenge that, we had was finding that balance to be able to support not only our families, but our employees and be able to make sure that they were well cared for. and understand the insurance process. So there was a lot of trial and error, and we started slow and we kept it small for a while until we could really get the systems in place that we needed to, move forward. And now, there was a lot of late nights and, long days and, years without paychecks that, we went through in order to get this moving. But I felt really, really confident that we were going to be able to make this work. And I was committed to ensuring that we would be able to do it and do it in a way that we were being ethical and be able to help the families that really needed the service.
And in the beginning, so you mentioned you were a teacher and you were entering the business world, right? Did you ever feel did you ever feel imposter syndrome in the beginning? And how did you overcome it? What did you tell yourself to
Yeah,
go over that hump?
for sure. I mean, I definitely had always wanted to run a business, but that wasn't my background. And I remember saying, should I go back and get an MBA? Well, my partner has a background in business. He has an MBA. My father has a business. He's an entrepreneur. And the two of them really helped shape some of our business structure. So I leaned on them quite a bit, and I learned quite a bit. And it's been interesting because there have been times throughout the business and throughout the growth where I have felt like, well, what am I doing here? I can oversee clinical operations and I can understand the training aspects and the growth from a clinical piece, but the business is harder and something, we grew to a certain point where, because I was involved in everything. I was in hiring. I was in every single detail of the business I was involved in. But in order to do that, I needed people that had the strategies and the knowledge to run a business. And then I would say recently, we've gotten to a place now where I step back a little bit and we have a very strong team involved, but I still wanted to be able to provide for the team and be able to lead. And I love teaching. I love mentoring. So I have gone out and gotten some executive business coaching, and I'm now a part of a board that supports business owners. And I've learned so much. And I'm taking that on so that I can continue to help grow the company. And that's been phenomenal for us.
And I want to touch back on something you mentioned earlier. You said, I always wanted to have my business, which I find really interesting because most of the time when I'm discussing with founders in the mental health space, this is not what they had envisioned for themselves at all. Business is like,
Yeah.
it's really not why they started what they started. Can you tell us a bit more about that and the vision that you had and why you saw yourself becoming a business owner?
So I think that, coming up from with a family that owned businesses, that was sort
Mm,
of something that was in the back of my head.
mhm.
I always wanted to have something that I could kind of create. I'm very creative. I like doing things and building processes and programs. And so that was always something that was in the back of my mind. I loved teaching and I always wanted to teach, but I always wanted to figure out what I could do to give back to the community. So this was kind of always on the radar. I just wasn't sure what it would look like. In a million years, this was not what it looked like. I thought I would have an office with a couch where I would come in and I would talk to people and I would help them. And, it would look like kind of like a typical therapeutic office. This is not what it was. This has exceeded my best imagination and expectations. And I love it. I'm very proud of what we're doing because we're helping so many families. I could have never helped 200 families, a year. And all of these people who now have jobs and are growing their careers with us. And that's a big deal to me. I love that. So we have a program called Steps University where people can work on their career development and become BCBAs. We help with scholarships, and that's really important to us.
It's really profound what you're just describing. And for the people who are listening and are a solo practitioner and thinking, should I start my own business? Do I want to scale? I think it's really meaningful what you're describing and the impact you can have if you have a bigger business and it becomes more than just you and how many people you can affect. I think there's so much beauty to this. And so you scaled to 3 clinics already. What have you found, Erin, has been the most rewarding part of that growth?
I think for me is, obviously we've learned so many things along the way, but I think it's knowing that we're helping so many people, knowing that we're getting things right and we have a good, we've got a good name in the industry and that people are coming to us because they believe in what we're doing and what we're saying, that we're able to help more and more people and more families. That's why I got into this. I got into this to help families, and we are able to do that, and now we're able to help even more families. And so it's given me an avenue where I'm constantly creating. I was talking to one of my colleagues yesterday, and I think I was throwing three you know different ideas of different programs at her yesterday. And I was like, okay, I think we're going to do this. And she was like, wait, which program is that for? So we're still developing those service lines and different things that I'm seeing in the industry that is needed. And, we've got a great early steps program where we help our early childhood kiddos that need, therapy and are struggling in preschools. They can come to us and get therapy all day or part day, depending on their needs. But we're finding that our, teenagers are struggling. And so we're considering, possibly building some clinic space where they can come and work on the skills that they need so that they can become successful adults. And, there's just so many different ideas that we have, and I'm excited to grow those. So the creativity continues.
That sounds amazing. And so that's the part that was the most rewarding. Now, what was the part that was the most challenging, like harder than you expected in scaling?
Oh, I mean, listen, there were years that we did not get paid. There were years that, listen, the pandemic came and we had to flip. Within 2 weeks, we flipped our entire model to telehealth. That was very challenging. I wrote to insurance commissioners to get us to be able to even do telehealth and how it was going to be possible. I quickly taught our clinicians how to do telehealth. That was really, challenging. We had to find the right people and the right to put in the right seats. That has been challenging. Everything has been challenging. There have been so many challenges along the way. And then, as you said before, the imposter syndrome is real. Being like, well, who put me in this position to be able to lead an organization like this? It's real. You look back and you're like, wait a minute, So there's so many challenges and they come up all the time. But I think I said just a little while ago, like learning how to bob and weave, we used to say that in the classroom, as kids kind of came at us or, chairs would be flying, books would be flying. If you're in special ed, like that happens. And if you're in ABA, that for sure happens. But now in the business realm, that happens too. So you have to learn how to bob and weave through all of that. And I think that we're for sure getting better and more agile. So that's, I think knowing what to get excited about and what to just let roll.
And Erin, you emphasize being clinically run and operated. Why is that distinction important and how does it shape your decisions?
So I think what's important for people to understand is that when you are clinically owned and you have somebody who is a behavior analyst running the operation, you have somebody who is bound by the behavior analyst ethics board, first of all, to ethically ensure that the therapy that is being given is following our ethics guidelines. So that's big. We need to follow a certain set of ethics guidelines, and we're ensuring that therapy is ethical. We understand the ins and outs of what our clients are looking for in therapy. We have it's not just somebody who's like maybe coming from like a business mindset of, we've got to push hours to get, a certain billable, hit a billable, target, but they understand like, well, sometimes supervision might be a little bit higher or parent training might be a little bit higher. because this child's in crisis, and like explaining that and being understanding of the clinical needs of each client, because these are actually people that we're helping, is really important. And understanding the training and all the things that go along with it is just, it's paramount to the therapy. And I think what we have seen is people come to us because we're at the forefront of that. And that's really important to us.
And so, in regards to these values and how to balance them with growing the business, how do you actually balance growing and serving more families while maintaining a very personalized approach, which is what makes Steps unique?
So we have very strong operations team. We have a strong leadership team. Our team is very, very well trained, and we're constantly adding more leadership and training to them so that the message is clear and they know what the expectations are. We close down the clinics a couple of times a year so that every single person hears the same message and they're getting the same training. We have ongoing trainings and ongoing support for everybody. We have a mentorship program. There's all sorts of layers that, get put into place so that that message is clear. And we have a lot of communication that happens, and we use a CRM tool that helps us communicate on every single client, and it's HIPAA compliant. And, families and parents, I'm sorry, our clinicians and our admin team can be on the same page about a client and know what's going on and can communicate that clearly so that the message is clear across the team. And so that's really helpful.
And Erin, you work near alongside CEO Sam Schnitzer.
Mhm.
What's the partnership like and how do you divide responsibilities?
It's a good question. So we work really closely together. He and I meet every week, and we have an agenda and we go through it and we talk through it. We talk multiple times a week. Actually, we are playing some phone tag right now, and we communicate all the time. We're constantly texting and emailing or texting and calling each other. He oversees a lot of the more business, financial, strategic decisions and ideas, but I'm more of the idea visionary type thought person. And then he kind of helps figure out how to make those things happen. He also is really, really great in helping to ensure like the operations and the HR and recruiting. Is very talented in HR and recruiting and making sure that those things happen. So where I'm overseeing the clinical, he's really overseeing kind of the back end business to make sure that those things are up to snuff. And because he's got another therapy company, he really understands, and he's been doing this a little bit longer. He understands the ebbs and flows, and he's a very steady hand where like, at least in the beginning, I could be like, getting nervous about things. And he's very steady, which is really nice to have. So we work extremely closely. We talk all the time, and it's been a great partnership.
And what have you felt has been the hardest thing to delegate as you've scaled from one location to three plus the in-home services?
And delegation has been hard. There was a time that like I had things like I was like an ironclad fist and I had everything. And so like I slowly had to like peel off. I think there was a couple years ago that Sam was like, you need to leave the office, like goodbye. And he, sent me home for a couple of weeks because I just, as we brought in kind of some new leadership people, and he was like, get out of here for a little bit, because I did have such a tight fist. So that was very hard for me. Really was, I struggled with that significantly. But over time, I have gotten much more comfortable with it. And now I delegate much, much more, and feel much more confident in it. It took me several years to be able to do that. And, now probably 3 years ago, I said to my team, I'm not going to be on our daily boards anymore. If you need something from me, you need to come to me, because I was finding that I would be spending hours and hours and hours and I would be solving all the problems, but I wasn't letting my team solve those problems. And I needed to let them do it because they are capable and they're fantastic at it. And I was hiring people on purpose that are smarter than me, and I needed to let them do it. And they're fabulous. I have a phenomenal team. And so I needed to let go, which was hard.
It is really hard, especially as you care so much about your work, and you understand and you want to manage people well. Becoming a leader is really also another set of skill. There is becoming a business owner, and then there is becoming a great manager, and that comes with delegating and surrendering,
Yeah.
which can be really
Hard.
hard.
Yeah.
And Erin, you're a speaker and an advocate in the autism community. What message do you most want people to hear about ABA therapy?
That it's safe, that you need to find a provider that you're comfortable with, that you have to find a provider that you feel is knows what they're talking about. If you get those red flags and discomfort in your belly, like go find somebody else. But that there's a ton of research around it. It has changed in the last 20 years. It is much more scent based. We are listening to those adults that are on the spectrum. There's many more adults with neurodiversity that are in the field now, and we're listening to them. And we are ensuring that their voices are heard, and we're applying that to the therapy so that people who have been through it and maybe were not through it in a way that they felt safe, we're making sure that people now are feeling safe and that they have a voice within the therapy and can say, I don't want to do this anymore. We're very play based. It's very fun. We're not sitting at a table all day. I don't know if we sit at tables for much of any part of the day. It's a lot of play. We've got lots of gyms. We have a messy playroom, and we have a library and a media center. And it's a blast. And the kids have a ton of fun when I see them running around and just having a great time. So, I think that, parents need to like really check out who they're working with and talk to them and see if it's somebody who they feel like they can trust. And if they don't feel comfortable with that person, then talk to the company and see if there's another match or another fit. And if they don't feel like they're getting anywhere, then maybe seek an alternative because it might just not be the right fit for them. But overall, most people in the industry are really out there to help and are following the guidelines and doing the best that they can and are following the ethics.
And Erin, if you had a magic wand to help you and the business to reach your goals within the next year, what would
Hmm.
it be?
Um, I hope that we can get into these other states and really be able to support more families. I hope that we can continue to grow and pursue some of these new programs that I'm dreaming up and starting to develop because I'm excited about them. I really want to continue to help other families in other areas. So I'm very, very excited about that. So I'm looking forward to our team is growing and I'm looking forward to continuing to grow that and see, there's going to be challenges with that. I know that. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that takes us and, see where we are in a year. There's a big growth projection that, we could be taking within the year. And I'm interested to see where it does take us. I'm hoping, like I said, that we're in a couple more states by this time next year and that, some of the other things that I'm hoping and I'm currently working on planning out, kind of takes effect. And I'm excited about that.
And in your business, from the chat that we had last time we met, I remember you said we don't have a shortage of patients, a lot of patients and a lot of people who need help. What we struggle with is finding the right talents. Can you share with the audience a bit what it is to find the right team members and what have been your challenges and how you figured out how to overcome them?
Sure. I mean, so here's, it's hard to find the right people. One in I think 31 children have autism currently. And, there are just not enough BCBAs. There's not. We are a small community. Half of the BCBAs that are out there graduated within the last 5 years. I think that's the quote. I can look up the statistic. And so with that, there's a lot of new behavior analysts, and a lot of these new behavior analysts are learning and need mentorship. We have a huge mentorship program at Steps, and we're constantly working with them to grow their knowledge and grow. But, you know, I've been in the industry for 25 years, and we're growing our team. And a lot of our behavior analysts have been in for under 5 years. And so we really need to grow that talent. They don't have 10 years of teaching experience and another 10 years of being a behavior analyst under their belt. So they're not pulling from all these different, we're still growing that. So, when we're looking for talent, we have incredible recruiters that are looking for people that want to learn, that want to grow, that are flexible, that are going to work with our team and are open. We're finding people and we're growing people. We have our own, like I said, Steps University program, but it's hard. It's hard to find people.
And Erin, when you're exhausted from juggling your clinical work, operations, growing the business, advocacy, what brings you back to why you started?
I still keep in touch with some of the first clients that I worked with. They're in their 30s now, and I love them. But I do step away. I think it's really important. For a while, I couldn't really step away, and I do now. I have a family. I love to read. So I will step away. It's okay to take, a couple days off and, regroup and refresh, and I'll do that. And I think, it's funny because I think when you do step away, that's when like more ideas pour in. So that definitely happens. But I think you come back just refreshed and ready for more. And so I'll do that. I have no problem doing that. And I'll take a couple days and, go read and hang out with the kids and do whatever.
What would you tell your 2008 version of yourself that is just starting Steps about the journey ahead?
This is going to be much bigger than you thought, that you can do this, but you don't know what you're in for. I probably would not tell myself everything because I think I might run away.
Yeah.
But I think that, the reality is that, you can do it. You tell my daughter, like, slay the day, like, you're going to do it.
Slay the day.
I sort of tell my 8-year-old, and she loves it. And I think that like the reality is I think that if you knew everything, you would never do it. Like the reality is it's been so worth it. I've loved it. And, my husband asked me that too. Like, he's like, would you do it again? And I'm like, 100%. I would do it again. I love it. I love every second of it. I'm excited to see what the next year brings and what the next, 3 years bring, 5 years, whatever. Because it's exciting. I love being able to help families. I love hearing from families. I love hearing from my staff and saying like, I came in, I was going to be a speech pathologist and now I want to be a behavior analyst, or, I never thought I wanted to do this and I love this. I love it. Or a BCBA who's struggling to pass and finally passes the behavior analyst exam. That's a very hard exam to pass. And they finally pass and they're excited and they're going to come on full time to be a BCBA for us. It's really rewarding to see people's like journeys like take off. Or the family who has like really dedicated their time to parent training and their child's graduating from our program because the parents have really grasped the concepts and are able to work with their child now independently. And they don't need us anymore. Like, that's amazing. That's the goal. So I love that. I love all of that.
Amazing. What
Yeah.
you're doing is so profound and so impactful. And Erin, where can people find you?
So they can find us on our website. We are www.stepsbh.com. We are also on Instagram and at Steps Behavioral Health, and on Facebook, also at Steps Behavioral Health, and on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Erin. It was a pleasure having you and hearing your story and the story of Steps.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And that wraps up today's episode. I am Anne-Lise Cailliez, and I can't wait to join you again next week. Thanks for listening to Parlez-Vous CEO today. If you enjoyed the show, leave a 5-star review. It helps us keep going. and connect with us on Instagram at Parlez-Vous CEO. I am Anne-Lise Cailliez, and I know some days are harder than others. On those tough days, think back to why you started. What you're doing today matters, even when you can't see the results yet. Ideas are great, but it's what you do with them that counts. Find everything we talked about today at parlezvousceo.com. See you next week, and you've got this.